All right, you can begin whenever you'd like.
Awesome. All right, good evening, everybody. Welcome to the October 20th, 2021 meeting of the CB6 Executive Committee. My name is Kyle Thide, and I am the chair of CB6. This meeting is being called to order at 6:30 p.m. And tonight we are joined by District Manager Jesus Perez. Tonight's minutes will be taken by CB6 Assistant Secretary Matt Bondi. We will now take attendance by roll call. Jesus will conduct the roll call. Please answer present when your name is called.
All right, just give me 1 second. All right, Kyle Thide.
Present.
Thank you. Elvie Barroso.
Present.
Thank you. Matt Bondi.
Here. I'm here.
All right, thank you. Claire Brennan. Claire Brennan. Actually, she might join us later. B. Disman.
Here.
Thank you. Rick Eggers.
Present.
Thank you. Molly Hollister. Molly Hollister. John Keller.
Present.
Thank you. Sandy McKee. Sandy McKee. Rich Mintz.
Present.
Thank you. Kevin O'Keefe.
Present.
Thank you. Matt Roberts.
Present.
Thank you. Gene Santoro. Gene Santoro. All right. Seema Shah.
Present.
Thank you. Sandro Sherrod. Sandro Sherrod. Mark Thompson.
Present.
Thank you. Brian Van Nieuwenhoven.
Present.
Thank you. With 12 members currently present, we do have a quorum.
All right, thank you, Jesus. So the agenda for tonight's meeting appears on the screen before you. If there is no objection, we will adopt the agenda as stated. So members of the executive committee, if you object to adopting the agenda, please raise your hand through Zoom. All right, seeing none, the agenda for tonight's meeting is adopted. So in order to conduct an efficient meeting tonight, let's just observe a few ground rules. First, no one may speak until granted the floor. Committee members, if you have a question about committee business or wish to make a motion, please raise your hand through Zoom. As a reminder, the chat function should not be used for committee business or questions or conversations. All such remarks should be made on the record by raising your hand through Zoom. Chat should only be used to alert us to any technical difficulties that you are having or to state in writing information such as an email address or link that was already stated aloud on the record during the meeting. Next, when a committee member is given the floor to speak, I will identify you and you can unmute yourself so that you can speak. We are required by New York State law to have a transcript of this meeting, so please keep all questions and comments succinct and germane to this discussion. So we'll begin with the chair's report. So the first thing I actually want to mention is I want to recognize Molly. As some of you know, the bylaws of our board allow for the previous chair to stay on the executive committee for 1 year. After the term is over, which will be at the end of this month. But this will be the last executive committee meeting before that point. So I do want to thank her once again for her service as the chair of our board for many years and her continued service on the board. But we'll miss her on the executive committee and we look forward to all of the great work that she'll lead. I wish she was on the meeting and we could give her a little applause for all of the work that she's continuing to lead. So we can still do that. She can look at the recording after the fact, but thank you, Molly, for all of your service. The next thing I want to discuss during my report is what I mentioned at last month's meeting and previous meetings too, is the modernization of our bylaws and revisiting that. So as you know, I asked for all of you to take the last month to review the bylaws and just put together some notes. And first, I want to walk you through the process that I'm thinking. If there's any feedback, suggestions as we move forward, that'd be great. And then I'll open it up for a brief discussion on it. I know many of you have already sent me your notes, which is really great. If you want to continue with that, please do so. But what I'm thinking is what I would like to do is have our executive committee essentially create a data bank, a sort of general data bank of all of the ideas, thoughts, feedback on the bylaws as they're currently operating, and put that into, as I mentioned, a data bank. And then I will like to take the suggestion that many have made of creating a specific task force or committee to explore this in further detail, but using those initial notes, feedback, comments as a starting point for those conversations, and have that particular committee be comprised of people who are more experienced on this board, but also newer, so that we can have a fresh set of eyes on the bylaws and how we're currently operating. Because as we know, not only has it been 2 years since we've revisited this, but it's also been a completely different world that we're now operating in. And so that has obviously created a lot of different conversations and requirements and things of that nature. So I'd like to explore that as we're also pushing to modernize other things like the open meetings law. I think it's appropriate for us to do that. I will ask the committee to review all of the comments, have those discussions, but also visit the city charter and also the bylaws of all of the other community boards as well, and work with the borough president's office to make sure that we're implementing not only best practices, but that we're also standard with what is required by the city. So with that, that's sort of the process that I would like to take. I don't know if anyone has any suggestions or feedback on that before opening it up for just a very brief discussion. Okay, seeing no hands or comments on that. I'd like to open up for a brief discussion on anything that people would like to discuss about modernizing these bylaws. I know that a lot of you have sent me, again, very detailed notes, which is exactly what I wanted, that I'll be compiling into a document. They're actually very similar concerns and issues across the board that I have seen through my initial readings. Which is great, because I think that means we're all on the same page in a lot of things, and that means there's going to be a lot of movement on that. But is there any sort of general comments that people had as they were reviewing the bylaws that they would like to share with the rest of the executive committee in reviewing them? Yeah, Kevin?
And sorry for the tardiness of my notes. I hope you got them today, Kyle. It seems that interpretation is an important thing. I did read through the city charter in addition to the bylaws. Minutes seems to be a big, heavy lift. Matt's on here. I'm sure he would second that. Matt Bondi, that is. The city charter says that minutes need to be taken, but it doesn't describe, or should say define, what minutes are. Why can't those in a modern world be a transcription service, or the fact that they are housed for all to see verbatim on YouTube? You know, obviously through Zoom. It just seems to me that's always a hard request. I think a lot of us are guilty, myself included, of getting in minutes late. So that's just, that's not the only thing, but that was the first blush reaction I had after reading the city charter.
Thank you. And Matt, I'll let you go. And also, I just want to caution, let's not get, into specifics about what we'd like to change, because that's what I would like our task force committee to focus on going forward, to go into the weeds on that. But Matt, do you have a follow-up on that? As I'm sure you do. You're on mute, by the way. You're on mute.
Look at that. Thank you. Now, I just wanted to voice my agreement with Kevin, because in this modern day and age, and with our requirement to have to verbatim transcribe the meeting and also record them, I had suggested in my email to you that we simply certify it, and that can come from the secretary and the assistant secretary and the chair and the vice chair of each respective committee. You see this in other contexts. You see this with transcripts in court when they're certified by the notary public or the court attorney, the court reporter. And so, to the extent that the minutes are meant to be something that is quick and easy for somebody to dispense with and inform themselves of what's going on. In this day and age, you can search the minutes for something. You keyword search it or you search it on topic, and you'll be able to find yourself at the point of discussion that you're interested in. So I'm just in agreement with Kevin that if we were to truly become modernized with the redundancies that exist already with respect to the transcript and the recording, I think that minutes can be simplified, and that's just my suggestion. So here, Kevin, I'm with you.
All right, appreciate that comment. And again, that will be up for the committee to discuss in particular. But the point that you're getting at too, that I want to stress, and obviously opened up to the entire executive committee before putting this on someone else's shoulders, is that there needs to be modernization with our processes. Now that we have been able to implement technology in a completely different way than we have ever before, I think that allows for discussions on certain things. Again, that'll go up to the committee about the difference between a transcript and what minutes are. And I think there's also very stark differences in that. At least my understanding is that they should be like Spark Notes. If someone looked at a set of minutes, that they didn't have to read verbatim every single thing that was written, but that they could follow along with a meeting. But again, for the committee, but that is the point that we're trying to discuss during these revisions, is how do these things change, but also what we have written down, how's that practically being implemented as well. So there have been a lot of different talks, a lot of feedback on things that are written in the bylaws that either don't seem necessary, aren't implemented in the right way, or should be slightly adjusted to reflect real life situations. And so that's why I want the task force / committee to discuss these in particular detail, and obviously will take place over several months. This is not something that needs to be done overnight. This is something that should be well thought out and discussed, and providing holistic input. But before we move on, is there any other sort of big picture things that people are thinking about with this process, or with just sort of general feedback about what they were able to take out from reviewing the bylaws?
This is Seema. I was trying to figure out how to raise my hand.
Go ahead.
The only thing, this is just like a bigger picture thing, and it potentially is not even relevant in this context, but, we don't really, I think I've been on the board like maybe 3 years, and I do not remember ever having a public hearing on anything. I mean, I could be mistaken. I'm sure we did at some point with Molly, I think, because I've only been here for Molly and you, Kyle. And I'm just curious, like, could we spell out what triggers a public hearing? Is that something relevant to include or update in the bylaw? That's was always the part of the agenda that I never really kind of understood, its purpose or value. So that's the only kind of idea that I had on the
sure.
bylaw.
Yeah. So for just to throw out some clear examples, is like the ULURP process is a public hearing for certain applications. What business affairs and licensing do is technically a quote unquote public hearing, because it allows for public discussion on a application process. But that's in the committee, right? Right. So that could technically be brought to a full board meeting. I know in my time on the board that has happened with in very special cases where the full board turned into a hearing case, but it allows for that flexibility. Okay. Mm-hmm. Brian, I see your hand up. I don't know if you have a response to that or something separate.
Yeah, I was going to mention there's a really good ongoing example of this. So when we do the budget and governance district needs statement process, one of our requirements is to have a public hearing on the budget. So our September budget committee is usually announced as a public hearing and a committee meeting. Now, they can't be the exact same thing. And it's important to note that although we do allow the public to speak at our committee meetings are not public hearings. They're for our committee business. So really, it's the discretion of the chair of the committee to see who gets called on from the public and to limit the discussion. In a true public hearing, you're answering whoever's up to speak for the public and taking that public input. So the required meeting that we have, or required public hearing that we have for budget, we simply have as like agenda item -1 for that budget committee meeting. Like it's the very first thing we do before we even open the budget committee meeting. So everybody who comes to the meeting comes at the 6:30 time. We open the hearing. In my 7 years on the board that I've been on this committee, 8 years now, nobody's ever shown up to this hearing. We immediately close the hearing and then we get on with the committee meeting. So this is why it kind of slips under the radar, is because we have very low attendance and we don't have like a lot of people showing up for public hearing type things. And we talked about this, I think, 2 years ago and last year, is that the board is generally very reactive to things, you know, considering a liquor license application, considering a DOT application. When we're proactive, we may get more stuff where we're kind of opening it up to the public and like having an informal public hearing or maybe even explicit one. But as long as we're doing these kind of reactive things and as long as it's very routine stuff, we will still abide by the formats of these public hearings, but in reality, they're not going to be very prominent.
All right, thank you, Brian. And again, just a reminder, I don't want to get too in the weeds on topics that the committee should be discussing, but let's move on. Oh, Mark, did you put your hand down?
Yeah, I was just going to say that public hearing is something required. Like for Euler, you know, we have no choice. We have to have that public hearing, and it's there. Sometimes they're big deals, but we don't really have a lot of that. That's a big deal. I mean, boards 3. I mean, I go to these things for work, and sometimes they're big to-dos when it's a major rezoning.
No, yeah, I mean, this, I just wanted to respond. I mean, I do know what a public hearing is,
Oh, okay, yeah.
Obviously. Yeah.
You've been there, I'm sure.
Yeah. Both professionally and you know, here. But I guess what I was trying to say is, you know, there are fewer engagement points. There seem to me to be fewer engagement points from the actual public. Because we don't want them necessarily speaking or taking up a ton of time at full board, you know, committee, you know, as Brian just said, sometimes the committee is just focused on committee business, right? It's like own agenda. And, you know, I know that like Jesus and the rest of the team get so many, you know, emails for just trying to use the most neutral word, emails and phone calls from the public. But, you know, are there opportunities for us to create more forums for direct engagement? And that was like really what I was trying to get at.
Thank you so much. Rick?
Yeah, and not to take it into the weeds, because I think you're right, Cal. This could go to a committee, but historically the direction was things were done in full board as a public hearing. And it dragged out the full board meeting too much. So we moved them over time. They got moved to committees where they could spend more time directly interacting with people who are engaged in that issue. And you didn't have people coming in at the end saying to a discussion that has already been done at the committee level. The other thing is, I think that in the charter, they actually outline what should be in the agenda of a community board meeting. It may not be there. It may be something we got from Robert's rules, but a public hearing was always considered to be part of a community board, full board meeting. So we put it on the agenda, but it almost never actually takes place. So we could, if the committee finds out that it isn't necessary to have it, we can at least take it off the agenda every time and only put it on when there's an actual substantive public hearing. And that's it. Other than that, a bylaws committee can discuss the details.
Awesome. All right. So I'll end it with that. And at the next meeting, I'll announce who I'm putting on that committee and who I'll ask to lead it and all of that stuff. And yeah, but in the interim, please continue to send me any thoughts, ideas you have on that, as I am compiling them into one document, and a lot of similar comments. So that's good to see and easy to organize. So just continue to do that. And already the initial batch that we have has been really great. And if you haven't already sent me something, please do so as soon as possible. All right, and with that, I'll conclude my report, and we'll now hear from District Manager Jesus Perez.
Thank you, Kyle. Good evening, everyone. Two announcements this evening. Firstly, you may have seen either from a communication from the borough president's office or in our afternoon Wednesday email today that the city community board trainings are back, and they have a lot more of them this time around. I highly encourage you to take a look at what's being offered and join some of those trainings. And if you feel that some of those trainings are particularly relevant to your committee members, just drop the office a line and we can easily send a registration info for that particular training or trainings to your committees. I'll also put the information for these trainings in the chat in case you guys want to see the link there. But there's that. Secondly, it's more of a sort of an FYI and committee related. So maybe I'll tell you now and then we can discuss it when the committees give the reports. But you may be aware that our district has several areas along Second Avenue where the special transit land use district applies. The special land use, district requires that builders of developments adjoining Second Avenue subway stations or proposed or planned stations, whenever we get it, to reserve space in their projects by providing an easement for public access to the subway and to other subway related uses. When the developer has a project within the special transit land use district, they have to file an application with the City Planning Commission and with the MTA asking for a certification that indicates whether their development actually needs to have the transit easement or not. We've had some of these applications in the past, and another one appears to be in the works and maybe headed our way in the coming weeks, because I've noticed there are already some materials posted on City Planning's online zoning application portal. The project would be located at 308 East 59th Street, right next to the Queensboro Bridge Approach Street. And apparently the developer has already been in talks with the MTA, and the MTA is apparently going to find that a transit easement is not necessary at that particular site, though they've been known to change their minds. Applications such as these are not subject to ULURP. So the board is not required to hold a public hearing or even comment if they don't want to. But if this thing does come our way, DCP will usually give us 3 or 4 weeks to comment, once the applications are referred to us. So perhaps, Sandy for the Land Use Committee and Jean for the Transportation Committee, you may want to think about whether this is something you want to take up at a future committee meeting, if in fact it comes down to us. But unless there are any questions, that concludes my report. And I see no questions. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Jesus. We'll now move on to our committee meetings in November. The first we have up is transportation. I don't believe Philip is on the call and Jean is out. So we'll just move on to the next one. All right, Kevin, Environment and Parks. Kevin, I don't know if you're on mute.
Thanks. After about 2 years, you'd think I'd catch on. Yes, but at least our first item is a cross committee with Transportation Committee. I have yet to appoint a deputy to be the lead researcher on this, but I have taken that role and have been in touch with the people that Jean had appointed. So we want to continue that discussion, hopefully with a deputy appointed by then, and I expect it will be. There's a lot of other environmental needs that have been bubbling up that I've heard from community, and in one case, a committee member, one of the latest being the use of leaf blowers and the fact that they take up, obviously, so much energy. But I really think it's important that we have a full discussion and pull in all our committee members on what's on their mind as far as environmental. There's a lot of issues out there. If you heard President Biden's speech just ended about half an hour ago, he touched on a lot of them that we might be interested in. The pilot program at St. Martin continues so far. It seems like it's going smoothly, but we do need an update on that, whether we're truly on course to making that permanent. And I think we are. More pops. One more has popped up on 2nd Avenue that has been closed off, and we don't necessarily understand why. 45th and 2nd. We'll be looking into that and some other open spaces that are indeed closed. Sheena Kaufman will give a report from Department of Parks and Rec. This is something that I had just stumbled upon. There was a resource guide, and if I'm not wrong, I think Mark had a hand in this. I know that Letty Simon had a hand in this, and I think that needs updating. What it is just a deep dive, because no one else, I think, is playing this role. You have community associations such as Murray Hill, but not one entity in the district that is updating the status of landmarks in the historic district. So I think that's important, and either I will do that, or again, I will try to appoint somebody for that exercise. And at least as of now, that's what's on
All right.
the agenda.
Any questions for Kevin? All right, seeing none, we'll move on to the next committee, Budget and Governmental Affairs.
Well, as far as the last meeting was the day before full board, our last full board, and we did the budget requests. I don't know that I was sufficiently grateful to the office for all the work that they put in on getting those requests in line. The district office has been just phenomenal on this project, and will continue. We have the next step, which is the district needs statement. The budget requests are folded into that. The document itself has to be updated. That's a district needs statement, but that's generally done by the district manager in consultation with the committee chair, and then the chair of the board actually signs the document. So Kyle, I'm sure you'll want to take a look at it before you sign it,
Of course.
and have as much input as you can. The next topic that we're coming to is the open meetings law. As you probably know, that it's the hiatus period when it runs out in January, when hopefully there'll be some new legislation that'll authorize something that takes into account some kind of remote access. We hope to have as guests of the meeting representatives from Brad Hoylman's office. Well, I think all our state elected officials who might be voting on this all of them have been invited to attend and discuss it. This topic is being handled by Reshma Patel, who will chair the meeting pretty much. I mean, it's the entire discussion of the meeting. So she'll be pretty much handling that. And we want to get to do two things. One, we want to find out what the state representatives want to accomplish, and we want to make sure that any needs that we have, as far as our doing hybrid meetings or only Zoom meetings and the options available to us, we want to make sure that the law that they pass is flexible enough that we can get our meetings done in the best possible way. One of the things that I'm most concerned about is as we go back into live meetings, are we going to be able to find the spaces that are both adequate for the size of the meeting that we have and welcoming enough? We had a hard enough time finding locations for meetings before the pandemic. Now I'm very concerned that we're going to have trouble finding that space that's larger than the district office, but smaller than Yankee Stadium. So anyway, that's what we're going to be talking about at the next meeting. We might have some extra time if there's something that's pressing on people's minds. They want to bring it up. Please just let me know, and we'll see if we can find some time on an agenda between now and the end of the year. And that's it.
All right, thank you, Rick. Are there any questions for the Budget and Governmental Affairs Committee? All right, thank you very much, Rick. Appreciate it. And again, as I stressed in the last meeting, a lot of credit goes to you and Reshma for putting together the budget needs and going through that whole process. So in addition to the board staff, a very big thanks and appreciation to you and Reshma and the rest of your committee. All right, moving on, we'll move to Health and Human Services, Elvie. You're on mute, Elvie.
Good evening, everyone. We didn't have any meeting last September and also this October. So our next meeting is on November 9. And about our current webinar, the series on healthy living. Our next one is going to be this coming next week, which is October 27. And I just need everyone's support on this because we didn't have a good number on our second webinar. I mean, actually our first one among this series. And we need all your support to disseminate the flyer and at least invite your families and friends to attend the next one. And the topic is on TB and COVID and screening on cancer. And so moving forward about this webinar, Kyle suggested that we probably need to spread out. So I think our next one is going to be made quarterly. So the next one will be in January. And also we have to think about topics that would be more interesting to the community. And probably that will, we can get more attendees to come to join that webinar. Our agenda for the next meeting, we are still in the process of making a decision on what topics we're gonna discuss for the November one. Anything else? Partnership. I think that's about it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, one of the other things that Elvie and I were discussing is, again, as with all of the committees, is collaboration. So particularly with Health and Human Services, there is a lot of overlap with a number of other issues. Some of the obvious ones are housing and homelessness, youth and education. So I suggest, reaching out and connecting if there are programs, if there are policies, if there are issues and needs in the community that you think need addressing, to work on that together. That's one of the big priorities that Elvie has mentioned for me, a lot of more cross collaboration. So I definitely encourage the other committees to definitely reach out and work with Elvie on such topics. Yeah, Rick, I see your hand up.
Yeah, can I just ask, I think senior centers would come under Elvie's committee, and I would be, just as one person, would be very interested to know if any progress has been made on getting the funding that was promised to the centers and what the future of some of our, particularly the Stein Center, which there's also the one at St. Peter's Church, but just what the future is for our senior centers would be I think a very interesting topic, but also might have to be something that has to be looked at privately and before it's discussed publicly.
Yeah, I think that's one of our committee vision. And from the last time, I think Jesus, isn't it that you mentioned that we don't really have any budget or funding for that one?
I don't recall mentioning anything about that, but what you and Anju can do, if you'd like, arrange a time to speak with me and with Brendan, and we can walk you through all of your committee's budget requests and what current information we have, because some of them haven't been updated in a while, because this year your committee did not talk about them.
Yeah, okay.
So yeah, arrange a call with you and Anju and me, and we can go through and walk you through all of those.
Okay, thank you.
Just to be clear, I was thinking of the money from the city that's already been promised for the senior centers, not any money that we would that as board we would give them. They have already outlined that there will be 25 new senior centers citywide, and we have a representation that some money would come to the Stein Center. I'd be very interested to know that. Might be that Carlina Rivera's staff is more up to date than we would be at this point.
Yeah, and that's probably something that I'll deal with offline with LV, just to investigate before we say anything publicly about that.
Yep, that makes sense.
Yeah.
But thank you, Rick. Yeah, that's a great point. All right, seeing no further questions for LV. Next full board meeting is November 10th. And then housing and homelessness. Rich, go ahead.
Yes. I can't see if I'm in camera frame. Do I look okay?
Yeah, you're perfect.
Okay, I can only see you. So we just met 2 days ago. We had an excellent meeting with lots of participation, including participation by all of the three of the members, which I thought was fantastic. The most substantive thing we discussed was Intro 2047, which is the bill that would prohibit discrimination in housing, rental housing based on criminal record. And we approved a resolution of support, which will come to full board next month. There are some questions about it that are likely to come up at full board, which we should get answers to from the sponsors between now and then, but I can handle that offline. We also talked a bit about Honda, the hotel to supportive housing conversion bill that passed and was signed into law, and what impact that is likely to have in our district. And I will say that I anticipate that we're going to have some tension in the district around hotel conversions near 29th and Lex, where there's already a hostility building in some of the immediate neighborhood to homeless housing, and spilling over into the idea of supportive housing because people don't make a distinction in their minds. So I'm just raising that as something that we need to keep our eye out for. And if these things come to the agenda, we have to think very carefully about how we want to negotiate the neighborhood politics to make sure that everyone gets a hearing, but that nothing gets out of hand. We don't have anything on the agenda now. I just raised this because it came up. We talked about TOPA, the Tenant Opportunity to Purchase Act, which is stalled in committee, but will come up again in January. And I would like to put it on the agenda for now, a presentation about TOPA from Senator Myree's office in the event that our public hearing doesn't happen. I don't want to bump them again. We could do a very brief presentation, but I don't want to go another meeting without bringing it up if we don't have to. The other things that thing that should be on the agenda, which may be brief, but it should be on there because I said it would be, is a follow-up discussion on how to promote the availability of rental assistance in the district. We are going to try to come up with some creative ideas between now and then. And this is a significant issue. I've already been contacted offline by Tilden asking for help. So there's awareness in the community that word isn't getting out about what assistance is available and how to apply. So we should put that on the agenda for now, unless we end up dealing with it offline as a committee before the next meeting. In terms of partnerships, LV, I'm probably going to want to talk to you about collaborating on a strategy for advocating for supportive housing that includes health and mental health services as part of the package, because that's something that's that I want to continue to push for. And lastly, I did ask the members of the committee about what they would like us to pursue in addition to the reactive things and our ongoing push for affordable and supportive housing, that's where the conversation about rental assistance came from. And I would like to, since we're lucky enough to have 3 enthusiastic new members, I'm going to try to nudge them to give me a little more thinking about what they would like to see happen, so that we can do a bit more forward-looking programming and not just react. I think that's all I got.
All right, thank you, Rich. Are there any questions for Rich? And Rich, we'll connect offline as well to prepare for that ULURP, because it's a pretty big one. So we'll talk about prepping for that.
Okay.
Awesome.
And we'll keep monitoring it on the city planning side. So far, it is still on schedule to certify November 1st. But again, until it actually does, we don't count our chickens before they're hatched.
Yep. All right, next executive committee meeting is on the 17th. And then we have public safety on the 18th. Matt, go ahead.
So we do have the one item already with the Racial Justice Commission. I believe Brendan has confirmed that and has the speaker all set to go there. It's going to be an introduction about the commission and probably some Q&A on that. We are going to add another item here. Thank you, Seema, for bringing this to my attention. With the we have 2 bills in the state Senate relating to parole. So the first one is S15A, which deals with eligibility for certain incarcerated persons of age 55, I guess 55 and up, seniors. And then S1415A, which also deals with discretionary release. And I believe in terms of a partnership here, we would want to invite somebody from Brad Hoyleman's office. I believe he's either the sponsor or co-sponsor of these bills. So he might be able to speak to some of these items. And then I think we'll look for a possible additional speaker on the subject, which I will look for as well. So more to come on that.
All right. Thank you so much, Matt. Are there any questions for the Public Safety Committee? Okay. Seeing none, we'll move on to Land Use and Waterfront. Sandy?
Yes, hello. We'll have our ESCR typical update. I think we do that every month. A recap of previous meeting. We didn't actually have a meeting, so no recap. So upcoming agenda, yes, ESCR. And then Kavitha actually recommended that we have someone come and talk to us about the city council vote for implementing racial impact studies as part of the New York City land use process. And I'm not sure who that would be. It's probably maybe our planning representatives. I could reach out to them and see if they could give us some kind of a brief overview of what the process is and how that's going to affect upcoming zoning issues. And then if the ULURP does go ahead, it sounds like that might be a joint meeting between Housing Homelessness Committee and ours. Is that something we have talked about?
Yes, that, I mean, I'm open to that. It's one or the other or both, and it's fine with me.
I think if we combine forces, it's always better. It just gives us a more solid backing for what we do. So that's definitely a partnership I think we should take advantage of. And I think probably coming up, we'll always have a kind of monthly recap of what's happening with the 197A implementation. And that's something we'll discuss at our next meeting to see how we're going to work that into our full-time agenda. And that's it.
All right, thank you so much, Sandy. Are there any questions for Sandy and the Land Use and Waterfront Committee?
Sandy, we'll workshop the language on these agenda items that you've given us just now.
Okay, great.
We'll let you know. We'll give you the language and you can sign off on it. And you said you would reach out to city planning regarding securing a speaker on the racial impact studies?
I will. And if you have any great ideas of who that should be, please let me know. But I think probably the first direction is to go to our city planning people.
Yeah, that's who we would go to. So, okay. And regarding the joint meeting on the ULURP, so it's already scheduled. I think it was already scheduled for the housing committee, and we've already given HPD the date. So is that going to be, and it was going to be just housing, is that going to be joint now, or can we just invite the land use committee members and have them be present there?
If it's joint, oh, sorry, go ahead. Rich.
No, I was going to say, so I'd like for, at least for this one, to stay within the Housing and Homelessness Committee. Sandy, I think it'd be good for you to be present at that meeting as well. And we can discuss offline sort of the interaction with that, but I don't want to do a joint meeting on that and overcomplicate it in any way.
Then we'll invite all members of the land use committee to attend that housing committee meeting and to be present for it.
And actually, just having seen this happen at CB5, they have just the first portion of the meeting be joint, and then they release the committee members that aren't involved. And it might be good to have lots of people vote on it. That's
Can you get your committee members to show up 2 weeks in a row, though?
I think so. Most of them are on several committees. So okay. we could send out a feeler, Kyle, if that's okay with you.
We can discuss this offline. This
okay.
Process.
Okay, great. Thank you.
All right. Next up, we have youth and education. John.
Yeah, hi. Last meeting last week was a good example of our new agenda where we had a detailed discussion of needs related to PS 116 that'll actually lead to a resolution for the full board meeting our next full board meeting. I also spoke with Superintendent McGuire of District 2 and gave a full report on issues related to school reopening. So I think we're in moving ahead with that plan of being very specifically focused on schools, individual schools in the district. Our upcoming agenda will November 23rd is it's the Tuesday before Thanksgiving, so we'll see what we get from the public, but we will continue that. We'll talk about the needs of a specific school and continue focus. And by then we should have data on October 31st is the big day for reporting information on who actually showed up in our schools this year. And so we should have something to talk about there. And we will also be put on the agenda for the meeting. That meeting will include an initial review of CV6 budget priorities. We have been pretty negligent about this in the past. I do have an answer to Rick to the question about PS 116, which I'll give you offline, the security request. And requests for partnerships. I think I think it's worked very well. We haven't been directly involved, but I think engaging transportation in the Washington Irving campus, Kyle, was a very good idea. And it's a step-by-step process, as we discussed at the last meeting. The committee vision remains to focus on individual schools. We're not trying to get into all the big picture stuff that's going on around town. There's a lot of noise. I attended a 4-hour CEC meeting last week with 200 people commenting. I mean, there's a lot of noise going around town, but I think we just want to laser focus on the schools in our district, and that's our vision. And there will be a lot of chatter around mayoral control and where the new mayor is going to take things. So that's it. And
John, if you could just clarify. So when we say ongoing discussion of issues related to school opening, Could we get more specific than that? Are we talking about issues of public health or?
Yeah, it would be
virtual
health
learning?
related. It would be, at the meeting, at our committee meeting, I gave a detailed discussion of, attendance statistics and, how the schools had experienced, the requirements of closing classes if someone had been exposed to COVID or someone tested positive for COVID, and the changes in the regulations. So we'll just keep the ongoing changes in the guidance on that. And we'll just keep an ongoing discussion of that going ahead. It's worked out better in some schools than others. Uptown, for example, has had very successful at getting very high levels of attendance. I'm just responding. I didn't want to get into the weeds here, but 94% of District 2 schools have 94% attendance, which is quite good. And it's interesting that it's best in the schools that had less remote learning last year, whereas the attendance goes down where there was more remote learning last year, and it's almost geographic progression from uptown to downtown. I can go into as much detail as you want on that. Right?
But also, I think also just in the upcoming months too, I know you don't want to get too in the weeds with some of the larger issues that are going on, but I think especially with the mayoral transition, we should be at least, and I know you have members of the CEC who have come to the committee to speak about what's going on there as well, but I think particularly around the gifted and talented program stuff, we should have some sort of a discussion on it that's more controlled. I think the CEC can kind of deal with the sort of public hearing style conversations that are going on, but to have particularly with our schools, and that's a way to kind of like silo it into something specific, whether that's discussion with the teachers, principals, administrators, about what works best for students, taking some stance on that, because that's something that I hear about when I'm out in the field, and I'm sure you do too in your
as I said,
capacities, and what the community board is going to do about it. And
the community board had a 4-hour meeting last week and passed a resolution, which I'd be happy to share with the board. That's a public resolution, taking a position on what the mayor has proposed, which was against what the mayor has proposed. And that invites quite a bit of, heated discussion when you get into these things. And but I'm happy. I have aimed to focus on issues that affect our schools, and I would put it in the context of asking, individual schools, what they feel about it, rather than having anything resembling a hearing on it, because that would get quickly. With the one hearing we had, which was controlled by Marisol Rosales, who's very senior, and people will, we might be able to get Marisol to do something again, but I don't want to. She's totally taken up now with the transition and everything. She's now the deputy chancellor, vice chancellor of the DOE. And just an addendum to my report, the Astros are beating the Red Sox 6-0.
Oh boy! All right.
It's actually 7. It's actually 7-0.
And it went up a run. See, I had to give my report. I couldn't follow that run. Okay.
It's like the stock market right now. Any further questions for John and youth and education? All right.
So just to be clear, item number 2 was when you submitted the agenda, John, TBD, but now it's no longer TBD. You're going to go ahead with the agenda item, right?
Yes, and what we'll do is I have one or two principals. I don't want to specify the schools here, but that I will call personally and talk to them and get a sense of where their schools are, and then I'll add them to the agenda after I've talked to them.
All right, thank you, John. We'll move on to business affairs and licensing. I don't see Anton on, and I don't, is Claire there? Yep, Claire joined.
Hi, I'm here, but is it possible I'm still like commuting back home. Could I be like, is this the last?
Yeah, it's the
item?
last thing.
Okay,
Unless you
yeah,
don't have
so-
anything big, you can just
Yeah, I don't
wave
really
your-
have anything big. Someone from Small Business Services is coming to our October meeting to present, but for November, we're still thinking about it. I'm sorry for the delay.
No, you're good. You're good. Just making sure.
Yeah, but thank
All
you.
right. No,
Claire, we actually have quite a few questions for you. When you get home, can you,
Uh-huh.
how long do you think you have before you get home?
Like 10 minutes.
Can you maybe call me at the office?
Sure.
Because we've got a few
Yeah.
things to discuss with you.
Will do.
Thank you.
All right. So move on to the end. Does any committee members have any old or new business? If you do, please raise your hand. All right, seeing no further business, I'll adjourn the meeting at 7:28 p.m. Thank you, everybody. I hope you all enjoy the rest of your evening, and I guess go Red Sox.
Goodbye, everyone. Thank you.
I know I
Bye,
felt sick
everyone.
saying it too, Mark.
Good night.
Good night,
Thank
everyone.
you.
Good night,
Good night.
everyone.
See you.